The sun was sinking behind the jagged red cliffs of Arizona Territory, painting the desert sky with streaks of gold and crimson. A warm wind carried the scent of dust, horses, and distant rain across the quiet frontier town of Dustwood. Dustwood wasn't much more than a handful of wooden buildings scattered along a single dirt street, a saloon, a general store, a sheriff's office, a blacksmith, and a few tired homes leaning against the desert wind. Most folks said nothing good ever happened in Dustwood, but sometimes destiny rode into town when no one expected it. The Dustwood Saloon was alive with the usual evening noise. Cowboys laughed loudly over whiskey glasses. A piano clanged out a crooked tune. Cards slapped against a poker table while a cloud of cigar smoke hung heavy in the air. Behind the bar, old Sam polished glasses with the slow patience of a man who had seen too much. The swinging doors creaked open. Every head in the saloon turned. A tall man stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the fading sunset behind him. His boots were dusty from a long ride. A weathered brown hat shaded his face. A dark duster coat hung over broad shoulders that carried the quiet strength of a man used to hard land and harder choices. This was Cole Carter. People in the territory knew his name, not because he looked for trouble, but because trouble always seemed to find him. Cole walked to the bar without a word. Sam poured him whiskey before he even asked. "You look like the desert tried to kill you again," Sam muttered. Cole gave a faint smirk. Wouldn't be the first time. He took a slow drink, letting the burn settle the dust in his throat. Outside, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the desert, but that wasn't the sound that made Cole pause. It was the sound of hooves, fast hooves, running hard. Cole turned his head slightly toward the saloon doors. Something was wrong, eh? Horse skidded to a halt outside. Then a crash. The doors burst open, and she stumbled inside. The woman looked like she had been riding for days. Her dark hair was tangled and windblown. Dust streaked her pale face. Her dress, once light blue, was torn at the sleeve and stained with travel and sweat. But it wasn't the exhaustion that froze the room. It was the look in her eyes. Fear, raw, desperate fear. She staggered 2 steps into the saloon before collapsing onto one knee. The piano stopped. The poker players froze. No one moved. The woman tried to stand again, but her legs trembled. "Please," she whispered, barely able to breathe. Cole was already moving. He reached her just before she fell again, steadying her by the shoulders. Up close, he could see the bruising on her wrist. Someone had grabbed her hard, too hard. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. They were a deep, stormy gray, and filled with pain. Cole said quietly. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that could calm a frightened horse or stop a bar fight before it started. "You're safe." She looked at him like she wasn't sure if that was true. Then her gaze flicked toward the doors behind her. Panic flooded her face. "They're coming," she gasped. The saloon grew silent again. Sam leaned forward. "Who's coming?" The woman tried to speak again, but the words caught in her throat. Cole felt her shaking, hard, like she had been running from something terrible, or someone. Outside, the wind picked up. Another rumble of thunder echoed across the desert. Then Cole heard it. More horses. Not one. Several, riding fast toward town. The woman gripped Cole's sleeve with surprising strength. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You don't understand," she said. "They won't stop until they find me." Cole studied her face carefully. Something about her fear was real, deadly real. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like she might refuse to answer. Then she said quietly, "Lena." Cole nodded once. "Well, Lena," he said, his voice low and steady, "you picked the right place to stop running." A few cowboys in the saloon exchanged nervous glances. Dustwood wasn't known for sticking its neck out for strangers, but Cole Carter was different. The sheriff pushed back his chair slowly. "You bring trouble to my town, miss." Lena swallowed hard. "I didn't bring it." Her eyes drifted back toward the doors. They did. Outside. The thunder of hooves was growing louder now. 5 riders, maybe 6. The sheriff cursed under his breath. Cole gently helped Lena sit in a nearby chair. You stay here, he said quietly. She grabbed his arm again. Fear flashed across her face. You don't know what they're capable of. Cole gave her a small, reassuring smile. Got a pretty good idea. He turned toward the saloon doors just as the riders appeared. Outside the windows, dark silhouettes against the lightning-lit sky. Outlaws. Every instinct in Cole's bones told him these weren't ordinary men chasing a runaway woman. These were hunters. And Lena was their prey. The saloon door swung open again. Boots stepped across the floorboards. The leader of the group removed his hat slowly. A scar cut across his cheek like a jagged lightning bolt. His cold eyes scanned the room. Then they landed on Lena. A cruel smile spread across his face. Well now, the man said, there you are. The saloon held its breath. Cole stepped forward slightly, placing himself between the outlaws and the woman behind him. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. And who might you be? He asked. Cole's voice stayed calm. Just a man having a drink. The outlaw chuckled. Then step aside. Cole didn't move. The man's smile faded. You don't understand, he said darkly. That woman belongs to us. Behind Cole, Lena's hands trembled. Cole's jaw tightened. She doesn't look like she agrees with that. The outlaw's hand drifted toward the gun on his hip. Around the room, chairs scraped quietly as other cowboys prepared to move. The tension thickened like a storm about to break. Outside, lightning flashed across the desert sky. The scarred man tilted his head slightly. You're making a mistake, cowboy. Cole rested his hand near his own revolver. Wouldn't be the first time. A long, deadly silence followed. Then the outlaw said something that made Lena's face turn ghost white. Bring her back, he said quietly, or the whole town burns. The room exploded into whispers. The sheriff looked uneasy, but Cole didn't move. Behind him, Lena's voice trembled. You should let them take me, she whispered. Cole shook his head slowly. Not happening. The outlaw leader laughed coldly. You think you can protect her? Cole's eyes hardened. Try me. Aside. Thunder cracked like a gunshot. The outlaw's smile returned darker now. All right, he said softly. We'll do this the hard way. His hand moved toward his revolver, and the entire saloon prepared to explode into violence. But what none of them knew was that Lena wasn't just running from outlaws. She was running from a secret powerful enough to destroy everything. And the moment Cole Carter stepped between her and those men, his life changed forever. Because before the night ended, blood would spill in dustwood, and the woman he had just sworn to protect would reveal a truth that could get them both killed. The silence inside the Dustwood saloon felt heavier than the desert heat. Every man in the room watched the standoff unfolding between Cole Carter and the scar-faced outlaw standing in the doorway. Outside, lightning flashed across the desert sky, briefly illuminating the 6 riders, waiting on horseback like vultures, circling their prey. The outlaw's fingers twitched dangerously close to the revolver at his hip. Cole's hand hovered just inches from his own gun. One wrong move, and the saloon would erupt in gunfire. Behind Cole, Lena sat frozen in the chair, her hands trembling so badly she had to grip the edge of the table just to steady herself. She looked like a woman who had run out of places to run. The sheriff cleared his throat nervously. Now hold on, he said cautiously. No one's starting a gunfight in my town tonight. The outlaw slowly turned his cold gaze toward the sheriff, then hand over the girl. Murmurs rippled through the room. The sheriff hesitated. Dustwood was a small town. Most folks preferred staying out of trouble. Fighting a gang of hardened riders wasn't exactly good for business. Cole noticed the hesitation, and he didn't like it. He spoke without turning around. She stays. The outlaw leader chuckled. You planning to die for a stranger, cowboy? Cole shrugged slightly. Depends who's asking. The outlaw took a slow step forward. Name's Wade Crowley. Several men in the saloon shifted uncomfortably. The name carried a reputation across the territory. Robbery, burned ranches, men who disappeared and were never seen again. Cole studied him carefully. So that's who Lena had been running from. Crowley smiled thinly. Now that introductions are done, he said. Step aside. Cole's voice stayed calm. No, the air turned electric. Crowley's smile vanished. You really want to make enemies tonight? Cole leaned slightly closer to him. Looks like you already did. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then suddenly, a loud crash of thunder shook the building. In that instant of distraction, Cole moved fast. He grabbed Lena's wrist and pulled her toward the back door of the saloon. Come on. The room erupted. Chairs toppled. Someone shouted. Crowley roared in fury. Stop them. Gunshots exploded. Glass shattered as bullets slammed into the wall. Cole kicked open the back door and dragged Lena into the stormy night. Rain had begun to fall, turning the desert dust into slick mud. 2 horses were tied behind the saloon. Cole untied them quickly. You ride? He asked. Lena nodded breathlessly. Good. More gunshots cracked behind them as Crowley's men burst out of the saloon. Cole swung into the saddle and pulled Lena up behind him. Hold on. The horse bolted forward just as bullets struck the wooden fence behind them. They raced through the dark streets of Dustwood while the storm raged overhead. Within seconds, the sound of pursuing hooves thundered behind them. They're coming, Lena shouted. Cole didn't look back. Yeah, they galloped out of town and into the open desert. Lightning flashed across the horizon, briefly revealing the jagged silhouettes of rocks and distant canyon walls. The wind whipped Lena's hair across her face as she clung tightly to Cole's coat. Her arms wrapped around him without thinking, and for a moment, despite the danger chasing them, she felt something strange. Safety. Cole rode like a man born in the saddle. He guided the horse through narrow desert trails and dry creek beds, using the terrain to lose their pursuers. But Crowley's gang was persistent. The sound of hooves never fully disappeared. After nearly an hour of hard riding, Cole finally slowed the horse near a cluster of rocky cliffs. A small hidden canyon opened before them. He guided the horse. Inside, the rocks shielded them from the wind and rain. Cole dismounted first and helped Lena down carefully. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. He caught her before she could fall. For a moment, they stood very close, closer than either of them expected. Lightning flashed again, illuminating their faces. Cole saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but also something deeper. Strength. You all right? He asked quietly. Lena nodded slowly. Think so. She stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Cole untied a small bedroll from his saddle. We'll rest here until the storm passes. Lena glanced nervously toward the canyon entrance. What if they find us? Cole gave a small half smile. They won't tonight. She studied him carefully. You sound very sure. Cole shrugged. I know these trails better than they do. Lena sat on a rock, rubbing her sore wrists. Cole noticed again the dark bruises around them. His jaw tightened. Crowley did that? She hesitated, then nodded. He thinks he owns me. Cole's eyes hardened. Well, he's wrong. The storm softened slightly, rain dripping from the canyon walls. For a while neither of them spoke, just the quiet sound of desert rain and distant thunder. Finally, Lena looked at him again. Why did you help me? Cole leaned back against a rock. Didn't look like anyone else was going to. That's not a reason. Cole thought for a moment, then said simply, you looked like someone who needed help. Lena stared down at the ground. I've needed help for a long time. Her voice cracked slightly. Cole noticed. Crowley after something? He asked. She looked up quickly. Fear flashed across her face again. I didn't tell you that. Cole nodded slowly. Fair enough. Another silence followed. Then, Lena whispered something so quietly he almost didn't hear it. Everyone who gets close to me ends up in danger. Cole gave a quiet chuckle. Lady, Danger and me are old friends. For the first time since entering the saloon, Lena smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. Cole noticed it immediately. and something inside him shifted. Then, suddenly, a faint sound echoed from the canyon entrance. Hoofbeats, Cole's head snapped up. Lena's smile vanished. They found us. The hoofbeats grew louder. More than one rider. Cole stood slowly, resting his hand on his revolver. Lightning flashed across the canyon entrance. Silhouettes appeared against the storm. 5 riders, and leading them, Wade Crowley. His voice echoed through the canyon. "You ride fast, cowboy," he called out, but not fast enough. Cole stepped slightly in front of Lena. Crowley's men spread out, blocking the canyon exit. Crowley dismounted slowly, his revolver gleaming in the lightning. "You should have stayed out of this," he said calmly. Cole didn't move. Behind him, Lena whispered something with quiet desperation. "You don't understand." Crowley smiled coldly. "Oh, I understand perfectly." Then he looked straight at Cole and said something that made the cowboy's blood run cold. "That woman you're protecting is worth more money than your entire ranch." The storm rumbled again. Cole slowly turned his head toward Lena. "What does he mean?" Lena's face went pale. Her voice trembled. "Because I stole something from him." Crowley's grin widened. "And now," he said, raising his gun, taking it back. The storm rumbled low across the canyon as lightning cracked through the dark sky. Cole Carter stood still as stone, his hand hovering near the grip of his revolver. Behind him, Lena's breathing was quick and shallow. Across the canyon entrance stood Wade Crowley and his men, their silhouettes dark against the rain. Crowley's revolver gleamed faintly in the lightning. "You're outnumbered, cowboy," he said calmly. Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. He had faced worse odds before, but something about this situation bothered him. Crowley wasn't acting like a man simply chasing a runaway woman. He was acting like a man hunting something valuable, and Lena had just confirmed it. "I stole something from him." Cole slowly turned his head toward her. "What did you take?" he asked quietly. Lena's hands trembled. Her eyes flicked nervously toward Crowley. "If I tell you," she whispered, "you'll wish you never helped me." Cole gave a small shrug. Too late for that now. Before she could respond, Crowley fired a warning shot into the canyon wall. The gunshot echoed like thunder. "Enough whispering," he shouted. His voice was sharp with impatience. "Hand her over, Carter." Cole frowned slightly. "You know my name?" Crowley chuckled darkly. "Everyone knows your name." That wasn't comforting. Cole had made enemies in the past. But Crowley didn't sound like a man guessing. He sounded certain, and that meant someone had been talking. Crowley tilted his head slightly. "You're a rancher now, aren't you?" Cole said nothing. Crowley continued casually. "Carter Ranch, 30 miles north of Dustwood." Behind him, Lena stiffened. Crowley's smile widened. "Nice place. Shame if something happened to it." Cole's jaw tightened. Now, the threat was personal. "You talk too much," Cole said. Crowley laughed. "Maybe." Then, his voice dropped. "But here's the truth." He gestured toward Lena. "That woman stole something worth killing for." Cole glanced back at her. Her face was pale as moonlight. Crowley continued, "And if she doesn't give it back," his smile turned cold, "I'll burn every ranch in this valley until she does." The canyon went silent except for the rain. Cole slowly stepped forward. "Sounds like you're planning a lot of trouble." Crowley shrugged. "Only if you make me." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Let me guess. You robbed a bank?" Lena shook her head. "Worse." Crowley laughed loudly. "Yes," he said. "Much worse." He took a step closer. "You see, cowboy, your mysterious little friend here didn't just steal money." Lightning flashed. For a brief moment, Crowley's face looked almost monstrous in the light. "She stole my ledger." Cole frowned. "A ledger?" Crowley nodded. "A little book full of names, deals, payments." Cole's stomach sank slightly. "A criminal ledger." "Evidence," Crowley continued calmly. "It lists every sheriff I've paid, every judge who looks the other way, an outlaw gang that works for me." He smiled. "That book is worth more than gold." Now Cole understood. If that ledger reached the law in a bigger city, Crowley's entire operation would collapse, which meant Lena wasn't just running for her life. She was carrying proof powerful enough to destroy him. Cole slowly looked at her. You planning to turn him in? Lena nodded. Yes. Crowley laughed again. That's adorable. His eyes turned deadly. But it's not happening. The rain intensified. Water ran down the canyon, rocks in thin streams. Cole exhaled slowly. Well, he rested his hand on his revolver. That's a problem. Crowley tilted his head. For who? Cole looked straight at him. For you, the outlaw leader. Sighed. I was hoping you'd say that. Then he raised his gun. Kill him. Everything exploded at once. Gunshots thundered through the canyon. Cole drew faster than lightning. Bang. One of Crowley's riders spun from his saddle. Cole grabbed Lena's arm. Get behind the rocks. They dove for cover as bullets slammed into the canyon walls. Dust and stone chips flew through the air. Crowley's men fired from horseback, trying to pin them down. Cole fired again. Another rider's hat flew off as the bullet grazed him. The horse reared wildly. Lena crouched behind a rock, clutching her side bag. Inside it, the ledger, the very thing men were dying for. Her heart pounded in her chest. Cole leaned out and fired again. Bang! Another outlaw dropped his rifle. Crowley cursed loudly, spread out. His men moved along the canyon edge, trying to surround them. Cole realized quickly what they were doing. They're flanking us, he muttered. Lena's voice trembled. We can't fight all of them. Cole checked his revolver. 3 bullets left. He looked toward the canyon wall behind them. It rose steeply, but there was a narrow path winding upward. A dangerous climb, but maybe their only chance. He turned to Lena. Can you climb? She followed his gaze. Her eyes widened. That's nearly vertical. Cole gave a small grin. Good thing I like challenges. Another bullet slammed into the rock near his head. Crowley shouted from the canyon entrance. You can't run forever. Cole grabbed Lena's hand. Time to prove him wrong. They sprinted toward the narrow path. Bullets whistled past them. Cole fired one last shot behind them to slow the outlaws. Then they began climbing. The rain made the rocks slick. Lena nearly slipped twice. Each time Cole grabbed her arm and pulled her up. Below them, Crowley's men were already starting the climb. Keep moving, Cole urged. Lightning flashed again. The canyon stretched below them like a black abyss. Finally, they reached the top of the cliff. Cole pulled Lena over the edge. They collapsed onto the rocky ground, breathing hard, but they didn't stop. They ran toward the dark desert hills beyond. Behind them, Crowley's furious voice echoed upward. Chase them. Cole grabbed his horse's reins where it had climbed partway along a lower trail. He helped Lena mount. They rode again into the stormy desert night. Miles passed before the sound of pursuers finally faded. The storm slowly died down. Moonlight broke through the clouds. They stopped near a small desert ridge overlooking the valley. Lena slid off the horse. Exhausted, Cole looked down at her seriously. That ledger. She nodded. It's still safe. She opened her bag. Slightly inside was a small leather book. Cole stared at it. That tiny object was the reason Crowley would hunt them across the entire territory. Lena closed the bag. I have to get this to the U.S. Marshal in Silver Ridge. Cole knew the town. 2 days ride, but dangerous territory, especially now. He was about to speak when a distant sound reached them. Not horses, not thunder, something else. A long, eerie howl, then another. Lena looked around nervously. What was that? Cole's face darkened. Wolves. The howls grew louder, closer, and then Cole noticed something far worse. Moving lights on the distant ridge behind them. Torches. Riders. Crowley hadn't given up. He had brought more men. Cole exhaled slowly. This night just keeps getting better. Lena's voice trembled. What do we do now? Cole looked toward the dark wilderness ahead, then back toward the approaching torches, and finally at Lena. We ride, he said quietly. But this time, his voice hardened. "We're not running." In the distance, Crowley's riders began to surround the valley, and the trap was closing. The desert night slowly faded into dawn as Cole, Carter and Lena rode north across the dry plains. The storm had passed, leaving the world quiet and cold. Pale sunlight stretched across the red desert, revealing miles of rugged land, scattered cactus, and distant mesas. Cole guided the horse carefully along a narrow trail winding through low hills. Neither of them had spoken much during the ride, but the tension between them had changed. It was no longer just fear. Something else had begun growing between them, something neither of them expected, something neither of them knew how to face. Lena finally broke the silence. "You said you had a ranch," she said softly. Cole nodded. "About 10 miles ahead." She looked toward the distant horizon. "You sure it's safe to go there?" Cole shrugged. "Safer than sleeping out here." She didn't answer. Her hand instinctively rested on the small leather bag containing Crowley's ledger, the book that could destroy an empire of corruption, the book that could also get them both killed. As the sun climbed higher, the land slowly changed. The dry desert gave way to greener patches of grass and scattered oak trees. Soon a wooden fence appeared along the trail. Beyond it stood a wide valley dotted with grazing cattle, and at the center of it all a ranch house, simple, strong, weathered by years of wind and dust. Cole slowed the horse. "Welcome to Carter Ranch." Lena looked around, surprised. It was beautiful in a quiet frontier way. A red barn stood beside the house. Windmills creaked softly in the morning breeze. Several ranch hands worked in the distance, repairing fences and tending horses. For the first time since leaving Dustwood, Lena felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Cole dismounted and helped her down. "You can rest here," he said. "Crowley won't find us right away." But even as he said it, he wasn't entirely sure it was true. Ranch hand named Tommy approached, leading another horse. He looked surprised. "Morning, boss." Then he noticed Lena. His eyebrows lifted. "Didn't expect company." Cole removed his hat. "Long story." Tommy nodded. "Well, breakfast's almost ready." Cole gestured toward the house. "Come on." Inside the ranch house, the warm smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air. Lena sat at the wooden table, while Cole poured 2 cups. Her hands were still shaking slightly from exhaustion. Cole noticed. "You haven't slept," he said. "Not really." He slid the coffee toward her. "You can stay here until we figure out the next move." She hesitated. "You're risking everything helping me." Cole leaned back in his chair. "I've risked worse." She looked down at the table. "You don't know what kind of men Crowley works with." Cole studied her face carefully. "Then, tell me." She hesitated again. Finally she whispered, "Judges, sheriffs, businessmen, powerful men, men who will kill anyone who threatens them." Cole wasn't surprised. "Crime in the territory often wore fancy clothes. Then, we make sure the ledger reaches Silver Ridge," he said. "Once the marshal sees it, Crowley's finished." Lena looked at him carefully. "You really believe that?" Cole nodded. "Yeah." But she didn't look convinced. Later that afternoon, Lena walked outside alone. The ranch was quiet. Wind moved gently through the tall grass. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. Cole found her standing near the fence, watching the horses. "You like them?" he asked. She nodded. "They're beautiful." Cole leaned against the fence beside her. "My father raised horses here." She glanced at him. "What happened to him?" "Outlaws," Cole said simply. "They raided the ranch when I was young." Lena's eyes softened. "I'm sorry." Cole shrugged. "Part of frontier life." They stood quietly for a moment. Then Lena said something unexpected. "You're different from most men I've met." Cole smirked slightly. "That good or bad?" "Good." She looked at him, really looked at him. "You help people without asking for anything." Cole shifted awkwardly. "Well, I try." Their eyes met. The air between them changed. Again, a quiet moment. full of emotion. Neither of them fully understood. Then suddenly a rifle shot echoed across the valley. Both of them spun toward the sound. Another shot rang out. One of the ranch hands shouted, "Riders coming!" Cole's expression darkened instantly. He ran toward the barn. Lena followed close behind. From the ridge above the ranch, a group of riders appeared. At least 10 men, all armed, and leading them Wade Crowley. Lena's heart sank. How did he find us? Cole didn't answer. He was already loading his rifle. Ranch hands scrambled for cover. Crowley's men rode fast toward the ranch house. Gunshots cracked across the valley. Bullets slammed into the barn walls. Cole fired from behind a fence post. Bang! One rider tumbled from his horse, but Crowley's gang kept coming. The ranch erupted into chaos. Horses panicked. Men shouted. Gunfire echoed through the valley. Lena hid behind a wagon, clutching the bag containing the ledger. Then suddenly a voice shouted beside her, "Get down!" It was Tommy. He pulled her behind the wagon just as a bullet struck the wood above her head. But as Lena caught her breath, she noticed something strange. Tommy wasn't firing at the outlaws. He was watching her, watching the bag. His eyes were cold and calculating. Lena's heart skipped. "You," she whispered. Tommy smiled slightly. Then, he pulled a revolver and pointed it straight at her. "You should have left that book in Dustwood." Her blood ran cold. "You're working for Crowley?" Tommy nodded. "Always have been." Before she could react, he grabbed the bag from her hands. Across the ranch yard, Crowley saw the movement. A cruel grin spread across his face. Cole noticed too. His eyes widened in shock. "Tommy." But it was too late. Tommy mounted a horse and galloped toward Crowley. The ledger was gone. Lena stood frozen. Cole's voice thundered across the ranch, "Stop him." But Crowley and his men were already retreating, riding fast toward the distant hills, taking the ledger with them. Cole lowered his rifle slowly. Rage burned in his eyes. Lena's voice broke. "I'm so sorry." Cole stared toward the disappearing riders. Then he said quietly, "This isn't over." Because now, Crowley had the ledger again, and with it, the power to destroy anyone who stood against him, including Cole Carter. The sun had already begun to set when Cole Carter finished saddling his horse. The sky over Carter Ranch burned orange and red, like the land itself was angry. The ranch yard was quiet now, too quiet. Broken fence posts leaned sideways. Bullet holes scarred the barn walls. A few injured horses were being tended by the ranch hands who remained. But the worst damage wasn't the ranch. It was the betrayal. Tommy had worked at Carter Ranch for 3 years. 3 years of riding cattle, sharing meals, laughing beside campfires, and the whole time, he had been feeding information to Wade Crowley. Cole tightened the saddle strap harder than necessary. His jaw was set like stone. Behind him, Lena stepped out of the ranch house. Her eyes were red from crying. "I should go after them alone," she said quietly. Cole didn't turn around. "No, they're after me, not you." Cole finally faced her. "You think that matters now?" Lena lowered her gaze. "If I hadn't come here." "Stop." His voice wasn't angry, just firm. "You didn't ask for this, but you're losing everything because of me." Cole shook his head. "I'm not losing anything." He climbed into the saddle. "I'm taking something back." She looked up at him. "The ledger?" Cole's eyes hardened. "No, justice." A moment passed between them. Then, Lena walked toward the horse. "Then I'm coming with you." Cole sighed. "That's a bad idea." "So, is going alone." Cole studied her carefully. The fear in her eyes was still there, but something stronger had replaced it. Determination. He knew that. "Look, you're stubborn," he said. She gave a small smile. "I've been told that before." Cole extended a hand. "All right." She took it. He pulled her up behind him onto the saddle, and together they rode into the deepening desert night. The trail to Red Canyon twisted through miles of jagged cliffs and dry riverbeds. Cole knew this place well. It was the kind of land where outlaws disappeared, and where lawmen often never returned. Moonlight spilled across the canyon walls, turning the rock silver. They stopped on a high ridge overlooking the canyon floor. Down below, a cluster of campfires glowed in the darkness. Crowley's camp. At least 15 men. Morlena's breath caught. That's a lot of guns. Cole nodded slowly. Yeah, she glanced at him. You have a plan? Cole studied the camp carefully. Well, sort of. That answer didn't comfort her. She followed his gaze. Near the largest fire sat Crowley himself. Tommy stood beside him, proudly holding the leather ledger. Crowley flipped through the pages slowly, then he laughed. Even from this distance, the sound carried up the canyon walls. He knows what he's got, Lena whispered. Cole nodded. And he's not letting it go easy. They watched silently as Crowley finished reading. Then he tossed the book onto a small wooden table beside him, guarded by 2 armed men. Cole turned back toward Lena. Here's the plan. I create a distraction. You slip down behind the camp and grab the ledger. She stared at him. You call that a plan? Cole smiled slightly. Worked before. I also got us shot at details. Lena sighed. But she knew they had no other choice. She nodded. All right. Cole handed her a small revolver. Just in case. She took it nervously. Try not to get killed, he added. You, too. They separated quietly. Cole rode his horse down a narrow path along the ridge. Meanwhile, Lena carefully climbed down the rocky canyon wall on the opposite side. Every loose stone made her heart race. Below her, Crowley's gang laughed around the fire, drinking whiskey, celebrating. Confident they had already won, Lena reached the canyon floor and moved silently from rock to rock. The ledger was only 20 yards away. Now, the 2 guards were distracted by a card game. She crept closer, closer. Her fingers brushed the edge of the wooden table. Then suddenly, gunshot exploded across the canyon. Bang! Cole had started the distraction. Chaos erupted instantly. Crowley's men jumped to their feet. Ambush. Cole fired again from the ridge. 2 men dove for cover. Horses panicked. Dust and shouting filled the air. Lena grabbed the ledger and stuffed it into her bag. But just as she turned to run, a hand grabbed her arm. Hard. She spun around. Tommy. His eyes burned with anger. Going somewhere? He ripped the bag from her shoulder. The ledger fell onto the ground between them. Tommy raised his revolver. You should have stayed quiet. Lena's hand trembled on her own gun. But before either of them fired, another gunshot rang out. Tommy's revolver flew from his hand. He screamed and dropped to his knees. Cole stood 20 yards away, revolver smoking. Step away from the lady. Tommy glared at him. Crowley turned toward the scene. His smile vanished. Carter. The entire camp froze. Then Crowley slowly drew his own revolver. Well, he said calmly, I was hoping you'd show up. Cole stepped forward. You've got something that doesn't belong to you. Crowley smirked. You mean the book? He kicked it toward himself. This little thing? Cole's eyes darkened. That's the one. Crowley laughed. You think you're walking out of here with it? The outlaws slowly surrounded them. Guns drawn. Cole and Lena stood back to back. Outnumbered again. Crowley cocked his revolver. End of the trail. Cowboy. But Cole didn't move. He simply said something quiet. Something that made Crowley frown. You forgot one thing. Crowley tilted his head. What's that? Cole smiled slightly. I'm not alone. At that exact moment, dozens of rifle shots erupted from the canyon rim above. Gunfire rained down on the outlaw camp. Crowley's men scattered in panic. From the cliffs above, a group of riders appeared, U.S. Marshals, and leading them the tall figure of Marshal Grant. Crowley's face twisted with fury. You. Cole tipped his hat slightly. Told you I had a plan, but the fight wasn't over yet. Crowley grabbed the ledger and mounted his horse. He fired wildly as he rode toward the canyon exit. This isn't over. Cole grabbed his rifle. Stay here, he told Lena. Then he mounted his horse and chased after Crowley into the dark canyon. The final showdown had begun, and only one of them would ride out alive. The desert night thundered with the sound of galloping hooves. Cole Carter leaned low over his horse's neck as he chased Wade Crowley. Through the twisting trails of red canyon, dust exploded beneath the pounding hooves. Moonlight flashed across the canyon walls like silver lightning. Ahead of him, Crowley rode hard, clutched in his hand the ledger, the one piece of evidence that could destroy his entire criminal empire. Crowley fired a wild shot behind him. The bullet whistled past Cole's shoulder and struck a rock. Cole didn't slow. This wasn't just about the ledger anymore. This was about every rancher Crowley had robbed, every town he had threatened, every innocent person forced to live in fear. And it was about Lena. Cole urged his horse faster. The canyon trail narrowed sharply. Crowley's horse leaped over a fallen tree. Cole followed seconds later. The chase burst out of the canyon and onto a wide desert plateau under the pale moonlight. Crowley finally slowed his horse and turned. He knew he couldn't outrun Cole forever. The wind howled across the empty land as both men faced each other. Two riders, two revolvers. One final moment. Crowley laughed bitterly. You're stubborn, Carter. Cole dismounted slowly. So I've been told. Crowley slid off his own horse. The ledger was tucked inside his coat now. You could have stayed a rancher, Crowley said. Instead you chose this. Cole's voice stayed calm. You chose it. Crowley smirked. Maybe. The wind carried dust between them. Crowley tilted his head slightly. You really think one book can stop me? Cole rested his hand near his revolver. Yeah, Crowley laughed. You're naive. There are dozens of men like me. Cole's eyes hardened. Then, we'll deal with them too. Crowley slowly drew his gun. Halfway. You've got courage, Carter. But courage doesn't stop bullets. Cole didn't move. For a long moment, the two men stood perfectly still. The wind howled louder. Somewhere far away, a wolf cried. Then Crowley said quietly, draw. Two guns flashed under the moonlight. Bang, bang. The echoes rolled across the desert. Crowley staggered backward. His revolver fell from his hand. A dark stain spread across his coat. Cole stood still. His smoking revolver pointed toward the ground. Crowley dropped to his knees. His breath came in shallow gasps. You, he whispered. Cole stepped forward slowly. Crowley tried to laugh, but blood filled his mouth. You think this ends it? Cole looked down at him. It ends you. Crowley collapsed onto the sand. The wind carried away the last breath of one of the territory's most feared outlaws. The desert fell silent. Again, Cole reached into Crowley's coat and pulled out the leather ledger. The small book felt heavier than gold. Behind him, distant riders approached. Marshal Grant and his men arrived moments later. Grant dismounted beside him. You got him. Cole handed over the ledger. That should clean up half the territory. Grant opened the book briefly and whistled low. Sheriffs, judges, businessmen. He looked up. This is bigger than we thought. Cole nodded. Make sure it counts. Grant closed the book. It will. Then Cole turned his horse back toward the canyon. Where you going? The marshal asked. Cole mounted the saddle. Back. To someone who needs to hear this is over. Dawn had begun to break by the time Cole returned to Red Canyon. The sky glowed soft pink across the horizon. The marshals were already gathering prisoners from Crowley's captured gang. Lena stood near the campfire, watching the rising sun. She turned when she heard hooves. Cole rode slowly toward her. Her eyes searched his face. What happened? Cole dismounted. It's done, she exhaled. Slowly, Crowley was gone. The nightmare was finally over. Tears filled her eyes. Again, not from fear this time. From relief. You risked everything, she whispered. Cole shrugged slightly. Seemed worth it. They stood quietly in the morning light. Then Lena spoke softly. I should go to Silver Ridge with the marshal. Cole nodded. That's probably smart. But She hesitated, but what? Lena looked around the wide desert, then back at the man who had saved her life. I don't want to run anymore. Cole studied her face carefully. What do you want? She took a slow breath. Peace. Cole smiled faintly. I might know a place like that. She raised an eyebrow. He gestured toward the distant hills. Carter Ranch. For a moment she said nothing. Then she stepped closer to him. You sure you want trouble like me around? Cole chuckled quietly. Lady, you've been trouble since the moment you walked into that saloon. She smiled. And yet, you still helped me. Cole met her eyes. Yeah, Lena's voice softened. Why? Cole answered with the same quiet words that had changed everything that night. Because you didn't have to face it alone. Her eyes shimmered, and for the first time since her long, desperate escape began. Lena believed him. The sun rose slowly over the western horizon. 2 horses waited beside them. 2 people who had survived danger, betrayal, and fear. But now, there was something stronger between them. Hope. Cole extended his hand. Ready to head home? Lena took it, and this time, she didn't let go.